Cool. Good to know what my audience is today, so that I can address you accordingly. Now, what I'm going to be doing today is not just talk about how you write a resume, what you add in your resume, but beyond that, what you need in order to be successful in your campus interviews or any other interview, even if it is off campus or even for those who have already started working, if you would look to switch your job at some point of time in the future, right? For all of this, your resume is the first and foremost thing that you essentially need. That's the first impression that you're going to be making on anyone who's going to look at it. So with that introduction, let me just jump into the details. What are we going to cover today? We'll look at different perspectives because we are going to be having different persona looking at your resume, and each person brings in their own perspective. And the first step towards all of this is the recruiter screen. Then the interviewer's eyes, because a recruiter looks at things differently from an interviewer. The interviewer can be a technical interviewer or a management interviewer. Then we'll look at technical interviews themselves, how you can prepare yourself for all of that. How do you tackle the questions around behavior, values, and finally we will end with Q&A. That brings me to the next point, which is if at all you have any questions, try and note them down so that we can come to that at the end. But that doesn't mean you cannot interrupt. Like you can raise your hand if there is anything at a particular point when I'm talking about certain topic that you want to discuss. Instead of just being, one-way communication, I would rather prefer if we can have a two-way communication. If you can also speak, if we can all together share thoughts, that's going to be a lot more beneficial for everyone, because few people may know something that the others may not, and talking about it and sharing your perspective definitely helps everyone here. I'm assuming I'm audible, clear. Before I get started, give me a thumbs up if everything's good. Perfect, thank you. Let's dive in. Now, this is something that a website called novaresume.com used sometime back, a few years back, in fact, to showcase their own work, what they can do and how they can help somebody build a resume. And, as an example, they built Elon Musk's resume and then showcased it. There are a few things here which I will talk about, but of course, if anyone would like to share their thoughts around, what this looks like and, what they feel when they look at this resume, please do so. I welcome you to unmute yourself and then, share your thoughts. Maybe 2 or 3 of you can do that. Anyone now? And don't worry, there's no right answer or wrong answer. So it's like, it's pretty open. Feel free to speak. And the more you speak, the better it is for all of us. Or maybe I have to pick somebody. Oh, there's somebody speaking. Yeah, go ahead.
It shows about the value that the person has.
Okay. Maybe Varsha, do you want to share your thoughts?
Pretty thorough, but also too many things to look at. Like there is no a single focus point.
Okay. How about I see someone here, Dheeraj NU. Okay, maybe Ketan.
It is well structured. His work experience, the skills are highlighted,
Mm-hmm.
the achievements and interests. So looking at interest, if it aligns with the job role, it would be a good fit.
Yep, all that's right. Pretty spot on, in fact. So why did I highlight this resume? There are a few things that you actually have to take a closer look here. In every single work experience item that has been mentioned, what has actually been highlighted is, the highlights or the specific contribution a person has had in that particular role. And likewise, the skills and competencies is very, very important. This is going to help, the person who's looking at the profile look at it and quickly figure out if this person is a right match or not. Achievements and certificates. Like this also helps people identify if somebody has been recognized for doing certain things. What are the different awards that they have received, right? And end of day, it. I also heard a point that there is a lot of information here, but in fact, I've seen things that are even worse. The first and foremost thing that you have to identify here is this entire resume, every information that somebody wants to portray is put in a single page. That is very, very important. The longer your resume, the less attention you're going to get. The more description your resume has, the less people are going to read it. What you'll absolutely need to do is try and condense information and keep only that which is very, very critical, something that you are absolutely proud of, and you want anybody who's looking at your profile to know. Everything else is not that important. Anything that is not that important, don't ever try and add it in your resume, and try as much as you can to declutter it, right? Now, we got a few perspectives from different people when they looked at it. Let me now move on to what a recruiter typically looks at the resume. When a recruiter looks at a resume, what are the different things that they are actually going to look for? Oops, I moved too much ahead. Okay, as I said, try and keep it in a single page. I do understand that from a student's perspective, you may not really have a lot of things, or the other way around, sometimes you actually may have a lot of things. Um, Try and keep it as simple and as condensed as possible. Only if it is absolutely necessary, go to a second page, but never extend your resume beyond 2 pages because nobody will read your resume beyond those 2 pages. And it becomes incredibly difficult for recruiters, especially when they are doing campus hiring. And when these campus hiring sessions happen for 200, 300 students at a time to go through each single resume, it is absolutely impossible. You can have a person's attention, a recruiter's attention, for not more than 2 minutes when they are screening your resume. I think somebody is not mute. If you can kindly mute yourself, there is some bit of background sound that I can hear. Okay, moving on. The second important thing, never share a Word document as your resume to a recruiter or upload it on any site. Always use a PDF. There are different reasons for it. For example, I work at Atlassian and most of us use Mac. I've previously worked with Apple also, where only Mac is used. I have friends and I know of companies which only use Linux or Unix, and none of them would have Microsoft Word installed. You may ask, well, there are alternatives for Word in all of these different operating systems that you're talking about, which is true. However, what you have to look at is when I open a file which is written or which is edited in a particular software in a different software altogether, there is always a chance that the alignment and the way you try to present it something can always be altered. And it is very likely that there are certain fonts that are not going to be available in a particular operating system that you have used, or some alignment in terms of um, the lines or the information which looks ugly when looked at in a different platform. So to avoid all of these things, if you can use PDF, and I think most of you should be able to do it now, you can convert a Word file into a PDF. Most of the times, you may even use a simple Google Docs or something, which is always online. That can also be converted into a PDF. So always make it a practice that you share your presentation in the form of PDF. If somebody is not mute, kindly mute yourself. I can hear myself as an echo. Thank you. Okay, the next thing which catches a recruiter's eyes, this is more specifically from a recruiter's perspective, is grammatical mistakes. When they glance through a resume and seeing something which is not grammatically correct is not encouraging. Not that you're not good. It's just that you are not giving sufficient attention to something which is a make or break for you, for your career, and for your life. So try, if there are a lot of tools which are online today which can help your grammar checks. Word itself can do a lot of that. If you're using, as I said, Google Docs, one tool that I typically use is Grammarly, which is on the browser. I can install it on Chrome, I can install it on Safari or any other browser for that matter. Use these kind of tools which can help you do grammar checks. If not, there are online grammar check softwares that are available, even sites that are available. Put the statements that you're adding in your resume in the grammar checker. Make sure that it is in the right grammar, you have used the right words. That's going to be pretty critical. The next point, keep your resume relevant. Highlight aspects that are most suited for a job. This is slightly different in various different scenarios. For example, if somebody who is experienced, who has worked in certain areas, let's say Java or Kotlin, or maybe even Node for that matter, right? They may share a lot of experience, a lot of highlights on those particular languages, those particular aspects and the project. As a student, you may have done projects on a particular topic. Let's say it is machine learning or artificial intelligence. Try and highlight things such as the language that you've used, the algorithm that you may have used, or if it's like machine learning, what kind of tools did you use and things of that sort. Now, there is another aspect to this also. For experienced candidates, when they're looking to switch their jobs, they're looking for a very specific role, which could be quite specific or specified areas of expertise, such as data engineering. There are a lot of roles which need you to be good at statistics, good at machine learning and other specific knowledge that you need to have. As a student also, there may be certain opportunities where you may find that, somebody is looking for this specific role. It could be like, a front-end engineering role, or it could be something else. Likewise, for people who are not of computer science background here, for electronics as well, you may have embedded system engineer, you may have VLSI engineering, right? All of these are specific areas. Now, whenever you are applying for these things, when you know that there is some bit of specialization that is necessary or that is required or that is expected, if you have experience in that, if you have done anything regarding that, keep the information in the resume as relevant to that position as possible. That is going to add a lot of value, and the recruiter will be very happy to see things that they are expecting or they are interested in, rather than reading through things that is not making any sense to them or they are least bothered about. Moving on, there are certain things that you absolutely need in your resume. One is your contact information. And here, when I say contact information, it's not your address. Nobody is going to send you a physical mail. They are not looking where you live and what is your physical address. So keep things relevant again. Things like email, which is likely that somebody is going to reach out to you over email. Things like phone number. Of course, we have phones which have dual SIMs now. There are multiple phone numbers, but don't add two phone numbers. That's not going to help. Add that one primary number on which you're always going to be available. That one single email that you're always going to use and respond from. Your LinkedIn information. That's going to be pretty critical because some recruiters may choose to send you a message via LinkedIn. They may want to connect to you first on LinkedIn, see what your LinkedIn profile says, and then from there take things ahead, right? Keep it minimal and make sure that whatever information that you're going to provide, especially here in the contact, you are available in these modes of contact as early as possible. Because, of course, email, it's asynchronous, so you may take time to respond, but be prompt on things. The next thing that recruiters specifically look for is the order of details that you mentioned, the order of events for that matter. And it is always desired that you add things in a reverse chronological order. So how does it matter for a student to present things in a reverse chronological order? Because I may not have any experience at all. Like, what do I mention? If that is your question, it is true. You may not have a lot of experience, but it is not that you don't have anything to share here at all. You absolutely have. You'll have a lot of projects that you would be doing as part of your academics. You may have done something outside your academics just out of your own interest. You may have taken up some internship at a particular organization. Try to mention these in the reverse chronological order. The first thing that a recruiter sees that you mention in your resume is the last thing that you did. So let's say you're in the final year, or let's take that example. Let's say you're in the final year. What is your final year project? That should come first. The next thing may be like if you did something in the pre-final year, that gets a mention at the second spot. If you did something in your second year, first year, that does take that takes space after that. Now, if there are internships, try to mention that first, unless you have done an internship which is in the third year or second year, which is slightly later. Even projects, even if you've done something which is just out of a hobby, out of your own interest, keep those things upfront and in the same order in which you have done them. That's going to help somebody visualize how you have progressed, right? What were different things that you did at different points of time? Because when looking at student resumes, it is very important. As an interviewer myself, we look at what kind of things you have done at different points of time in your education. For example, what did you do in your second year? What did you do in your third year and fourth year? Like, it is expected, or rather, we are delighted when we see somebody doing simple things such as exploring databases, learning in depth around how um, connections work, networking aspects work, those kind of things in the earlier years of education. Whereas in maybe like your third and fourth years, we look at what is the scale at which you have done things. Is it complex? How complex is something? Or if you were catering to a certain set of audience or certain set of customers for that matter, who were they? What is the kind of audience, or what is the kind of customers that you were trying to serve, and what is the number of that, if at all, we can estimate? These things are not necessarily what you mention, but these things are what the recruiters, or even for that matter, interviewers later, when they look at your resume, actually try and get to. And the next point is keep it precise. Don't write long paragraphs. Like, this is a project, the project description was like, blah, 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 blah. And then I did this in the project, we had this problem in the project. No, that's not going to be helpful. Just keep bullet points and try to limit it again to maybe 3 or 4 bullet points under each line item. Like, if there is a project, mention 3 to 4 bullet points about that project. Maybe one bullet point is your description. The second bullet point is what was your individual contribution. Third bullet point being what technology did you use, and maybe the fourth one being um, like what did you learn out of it, or what was your accomplishment from this particular project. Keep it very precise, as precise as possible. Right. Next thing, nobody needs to know whether you're a male or female. Most of the time, it is pretty self-explanatory with the name. Even if it's not, don't bother about it. Even recently, I have seen resumes which mention, I am male, I am not married, this is my passport number, and even, to an extent that there is some declaration, all the information that I provided here is true to the best of my honesty and whatnot. All that is absolutely unnecessary. Please try to avoid any of that. Let me now move on from a recruiter's perspective to the interviewer's perspective. Now, your technical interviews typically are, are 2 or 3 different kinds. One, you may have a coding round. You may have to write code, which is on some online platform like CodeChef, or could be HackerRank, or could be something else. Here, you may think that my resume is not going to make any difference. That is actually a wrong conception. And I will tell you why. At Atlassian, before we shortlist candidates for an interview, we also have the HackerRank online coding test, wherein you take probably like an hour's time, and then you solve 3 different problems, each of some different complexity and whatnot. We do it on HackerRank, and in HackerRank, there is a section where you can add details about yourself, provide your GitHub or other links, GitHub, LinkedIn, whatnot, and which also kind of serves as a pretty simple resume of what you've done, including your scores. What is your CGPA and whatnot, right? That's there for us to look at. Now, when we do a screening of candidates from campus, and end of day, we get the scores, we look at the scores, we do plagiarism checks to make sure that people have not copied code from one another or from somewhere else. Once all of that is done, the next thing that we look at shortlisting candidates is what have they mentioned in their resumes or in their HackerRank profiles? What different things have they done? There are different cases where somebody has done open source contributions. They've mentioned their GitHub links. We look at those GitHub links. We look at what they've done. We look at LinkedIn profiles. we look at, any publications that you may have, which includes, IEEE. We are doing this as part of IEEE, and IEEE is one of the um, primary places where you can publish your research work, and not just research work, anything that you find interesting and exciting. It's a platform to publish, right? There's of course ACM and many other opportunities for you to do that as well. So that becomes pretty important. And what else do we look at? We look at what you've done outside your curriculum. Is there something that you have explored? Is there something that you have learned? Again, the description, though not in paragraphs, as I mentioned, in bullet points, whatever you provide, whether it is your resume or whether it is your profiles online on things like HackerRank and LinkedIn, are going to be very, very critical. Publications, of course, your certificates. Don't add certificates like, I won third place in running race competition in standard 6, 7. No, nobody's going to be interested in that. But if you've represented yourself or your school, college at some distinguished level, let's say at a district level, at a state level, in a particular sport, in, even for that matter, in some sort of a quiz competition, or in other hackathons and whatnot, a lot of things keep happening. Make sure that even if you mention certifications and mention anything, it is something that you yourself feel really proud about, proud of. Pick and choose. If you have 10 different certifications, you don't need to mention 10. Pick the most important 3 or 4. Mention those. Mention only those. All right. Now, in projects, whenever you talk about projects, 3 things are very, very critical. What was your project? How did you achieve that? And why did you do it? Most of the time when we look at resume and even talk to candidates, people say, I did this. I built this application, and I built this application in 10 days and using this particular language, use these technologies. I built this fantastic algorithm which worked to help me identify things, in artificial intelligence and whatnot. You also have to look at one more critical thing, which is why. Why did you do it? What was the need for it, right? What is it serving? What who is it helping? So you have to try and answer these kind of questions. Precisely, if you mention, what this is, it helps the interviewer strike a conversation with you when you are screened, you are shortlisted, and you are actually talking to the interviewer. Moving on, there are, from a technical interviews perspective again, as I mentioned, HackerRank profiles are pretty important. Practice on HackerRank. This is your first, beyond recruiter screen for that matter. This is your entry point to any interview, to any company for that matter. And most companies these days use LeetCode. I'm hopeful that most of you have heard of LeetCode. This is where, did somebody want to speak about something? Okay, we can take questions if you have at the end of the session. I'm going to give sufficient time for that, but I'll continue for now. So LeetCode is a platform online which has various different kinds of problems, different complexities. You start solving them. It helps you crack any big interview for that matter. From what I know, all companies, inclusive of the likes of Google, Facebook, and including Tesla in the US for that matter, use a lot of things from them. So that should be your, playground for practicing anything that you like. In technical interviews, focus more on your foundations. I've mentioned networking, database, and operating systems. more from a CS perspective here, which need not be the case all the time. There will be candidates from electronics and communication, electrical and mechanical, whatever is the fundamentals that you need to know, which are important. Focus on those. It is very, very important that you know these things. And let's say you're an electronics and communication engineer. That's your that's the subject that you've taken for doing your engineering, but you are attending an interview for a software company. Let's say it is Atlassian for that matter, right? While we understand that you are an electronics major, it is also important for us because we are a software company that you know the basics of computer science. Not if it need not be extensive, but to some extent, to an extent that you can understand how as simple as how internet works, right? If I ask you a question, how does Google search work? What happens if you go and type google.com on your browser's address bar? What happens behind the screens, all the way from your browser to Google servers and back to your browser? This is something that you should be able to give a good and comprehensive explanation, right? There are, of course, things like this which become quite important. As I said, foundations are very, very important, and focus on your foundations. At the same time, there is a lot of focus for students to get into data structures and algorithms. It is important. I will not deny that. That is your, as I mentioned, that is how you can get an interview. Unless you know that well, you will not be able to get into an interview. Now, once you clear that hurdle, somebody who's interviewing you already knows that you can actually solve these problems. So they are not going to ask you simple and straightforward questions like, can you implement a binary search tree for me? Or can you implement, some algorithm for me? They are not going to do that. They are going to focus more on application of these algorithms and data structures that somebody may ask you to design a phone book, the phone book that you have, contacts list that you have on your phone, right? How do you implement that? Now, it combines both your data structures and algorithms here, because you will have to create these objects yourself, store them, give think about what is the primary thing that you're doing, whether it is insert that is critical or whether it is search that is critical. Optimize your application, optimize your data structure to help you achieve the most important thing. And then, of course, you'll also have to search for contacts, search for phone numbers and whatnot. Likewise, in interviews, don't expect somebody to again ask you questions around data structures and algorithms. Even if it is indirectly related to data structures and algorithms, you're not going to get direct questions on those. Most of the companies, most of the employers are looking for people who can apply their knowledge. They are looking for people who have ideas, who can bring in new ideas, innovative ideas into the system. And that is in fact, campus interviews and students are the biggest channel for them to tap into these kind of new ideas. So think beyond your data structures and algorithms. Think about what you can do with data structures and algorithms before preparing for interviews. And finally, for any interviewer to understand you well, you have to communicate well. You have to be confident of what you know. You have to be confident when you speak about something. There are two different ways in which different interviews go. The earlier rounds of interviews that you may have, for example, if you're attending a campus interview which has 2 or 3 rounds of interviews, out of which 2 are technical interviews. The first round may focus more on the breadth of your knowledge. What different things do you know? Do you know this? Do you know this concept? Do you know the other concept? The second interview typically focuses on the depth of concepts. How well do you know something? How deep do you understand the underlying things of what you have worked on? They will try and dig more into a project that you may have done, right? It could be an academic project, it could be from an internship, it could be something else. Typically, again, from my experiences, what we do is we ask candidates to talk about a project that they are really proud about, a project that they understand really well, and then go as much in depth as possible to get an understanding of how they did things, how did they go about solving different problems, and even on that front, what were the different problems that they were solving. From problem to solution, it is the depth of knowledge which is important here. And now your communication skills play a very important role in conveying the right things in the right way. This is also critical beyond technical interviews. I'll get to that very soon in the very next slide for that matter. But be sure that when you know something, you know that. Be very confident of it. But at the same time, if you know something and then that's not in depth, that's not going to the very depth of how something works, and you don't know that, speak that upfront. Tell the interviewer that I know this much, but beyond that I don't know. And it is okay to say that. It is not that even if you are doing a project which is of 2 or 3 months of duration, you will know every single thing that's happening there. There are obviously blind spots, even for highly experienced people, 5, 6 years in the industry working on the same project. They may have blind spots of how something works or how something does not work. They may just not know that. And being open about all of it is going to be very helpful. The interviewer actually may know something about it, and they may share their experience with you, right? So you again learn from an interview as well. The next thing which is important, both in an interview process as well as something that should come out in your resume, is your behavior and values. What are these things, right? Are you a team player? If in your resume you can, you can showcase for things like projects that you've done, which involves more than 2 people, which you have done with a team, always try to make a mention of it. And in any interview, when talking about things, acknowledge what other people also have done. It is not just about you. It is absolutely not possible for anybody to build anything which is considered groundbreaking or innovative today as an individual. Vikram Sarabhai may be considered the father of Indian space, but he did not do things individually. Neither did Dr. Abdul Kalam. It is always a team which worked with them to make these things happen. So be open, acknowledge that it is actually a team which did this. Focus on your contributions, but at the same time, acknowledge things that were done by other people. I think in Abdul Kalam's book, The Wings of Fire, there is a mention, or I don't remember which one exactly, or maybe in his biography. There was a situation where um, a launch of a particular satellite crash landed into the Bay of Bengal. Abdul Kalam took responsibility for this entire thing, and he was answering the questions for press that day. The very next attempt to launch this was success. That's when he gave all the credit to his team. So there are leadership qualities. There is an acknowledgement of the people that you work with. That humility is something that you also have to make sure that you have in you, develop, and also kind of showcase to people as a critical skill or a critical attribute that you have. The next thing that comes to play here is decision making. Whenever you're talking to an interviewer, they are looking to figure out how you make certain decisions. Let's say you're writing code, you are implementing some problem that you have been thrown at, and you may use an array. You may use an array or a list, or for that matter, a dictionary, which is, in other words, same as map. You may end up using a linked list. You may use a heap. You may use something else. Why did you use something? Why did you choose to use a linked list instead of something else? That's something that you have to talk about. What are the different considerations that you've made before writing this piece of code? What are the alternatives that you have? What is the optimization that you're going to achieve by using this? What is the loss that you have? What is the compromise that you will have to make if you use something else? These are some things that typically comes in. They're not things you can highlight in your resume, and you shouldn't look for that, but they are things that are critical when you are in an interview. And another thing which is very important, especially when writing code, is speak your mind. Speak everything that you're thinking, right? You may be asked to write some code while doing an interview. Speak what you're thinking. Speak why you're writing this line of code. Let's say there is an if-else statement that you're writing, right? You can also substitute that with switch case. Why are you using if-else, and why not switch case? You'll have to talk about these things. That helps the interviewer know what's running in your mind. That helps the interviewer understand how you think, how logical and how critical is your thinking, and gives them a lot of insights into whether uh, you are suitable for this particular role, whether you are the best person to be hired. Now, it is not necessary that you finish and complete all the solutions all the time, because a question may be really hard and you may not be able to finish writing code, or you may not be able to finish writing or designing the entire solution. But the more you speak, the more you talk about different decisions you're making, the better insights an interviewer gets, and the better are your chances of actually making through, right? Now, beyond this, again, there are two very critical non-technical aspects. One is your own integrity. Never ever write something in a resume that you have not done. That is not true. Be your own critic here, and kind of review it 100 times. There should not be a single statement in your resume which does not hold true. That is very, very important. And likewise, when you're in an interview, never say something that you have not done. You may say, never even say something that you know if you don't know something, right? For that matter, I for this happens for anyone for that matter, but it's more so from my experience that somebody from a non-computer science background, when asked about a computer science question, do you know database design? It's the tendency of somebody to say yes, and they may not actually know that. Likewise, if you know operating systems, even for computer science candidates, right? Are you good at operating systems? That's a very open-ended question. Think about it. Feel free to say how much you're confident and how much you're comfortable in any question that they ask, right? Nobody expects you to be an expert in everything. That's well known. But at the same time, if you say something make sure that you can answer any question that comes your way to the best of your knowledge. Never think of cooking up stories for something. This is a funny one, in fact. Not the I'll not name the college or institution. Um, this happened. I had traveled to one of the cities in the northern part of India last year for an interview, and a candidate I was interviewing was it was the second technical round for him, and he started telling me a story about himself and his life. How uh, he was doing really bad when he was at school, and then how he improved, and how he scored so much marks in different semesters. His journey of improvement. This was his way of trying to distract maybe an interviewer to make somebody feel that he's somebody who learns things fast and improves and tries to excel. And when we actually finished all the round of interviews and then sat down with everybody who had done interviews to discuss on candidates, we figured out that he had essentially spent about 7 minutes in each interview talking about this. That was a waste of time, in my true opinion, because it did not help anyone. And at the same time, never try and do those kind of things repeatedly. You may express that to one interviewer and don't do that again with any other interviewer, especially in the same organization for the same organization that you're interviewing, because um, the decisions about hiring or not hiring somebody is not made by individuals. It is actually made by a group of people, right? Um, that doesn't mean that you have to impress everyone, even if you have, done. If one of your interviews did not go really great, but the others went well, you will still have a chance. So try to be honest to yourself. The other important thing that people also look for is, what is that this candidate can bring to the table, right? Whether they continue to do things that may not be ethically right, or do they actually stand up to it and then say they try to make things right. It's not about revolting against something and trying to pick a fight, or doing a strike in a college, but it's about how you can influence people to do the right thing, how you can influence yourself, how you can keep yourself motivated to do the right thing, rather than just agreeing to do something because everybody else thought that's what we should be doing, right? That's the change maker attitude that people look for. These some companies have a very explicit management or a managerial round where they ask these kind of questions. Some don't, and this thing comes in any regular interview that somebody is doing. You may not know it, but the interviewer may be evaluating on everything here very consciously for themselves. It'll be a very subconscious or a way or an unknown thing for you. But the kind of questions that are being asked will actually lead interviewers to make assessments on all of these different things. Now, we've spent quite a lot of time, about 50 minutes, 55 minutes talking about these things. The last few things that I want to talk to you about is some of the tips and tricks that you can use. If there is anything that you can do online, as in, have your code in a GitHub repository, do that and include those links in your resume. Keep your LinkedIn profile updated. If you have been able to do an internship in an organization, which is, even if it is a small company, try to add those details. One. Two, if there is someone who can vouch for you, who can give you a testimonial, ask them to do that on LinkedIn. because that adds a lot of value. Third thing, practice, practice, and practice, and use lead code for all of this. This is going to be very, very critical. The better you are in doing solving problems, this is not just for computer science people, this is for anybody who's looking to crack an interview with any software company, and even outside software companies, because um, even for those who are looking forward to getting into electronics majors, like Synopsys, like Mentor Graphics, though it is all electronics, you are going to be writing a lot of code, right? And try and practice as much as you can. That is going to help. Beyond that, don't just keep things to algorithms and practicing these things. Try and see if you can build something out of it. Your application of the knowledge that you have is going to prove very, very critical. If you just know how to write, how to solve a particular algorithm, how to write the best code and the optimized code for a particular algorithm, you may be good at that. But if you cannot identify where you can apply it, that's not going to be helpful at all. You should develop that thinking that anything and everything that I'm learning in the college as part of my degree today is going to be applied somewhere in some format. Try to see if you can find applications for anything that you're doing. That is going to be very critical. Now, I spoke about internships and projects, and I also know that it is not possible for everybody to get internships. Um, it's just the nature of it that there may not be enough opportunities in different companies. That is where the open source community proves to be absolutely a blessing for all students. I may be very focused or specific about software industry here, but you will definitely have opportunities even in the embedded systems world, wherein you can build something, wherein you can do something. Now, in the form of open source, there are two very specific events that I want to bring your attention to. One is called the Hacktoberfest, which is done by a company called DigitalOcean. The other one is called GSOC, which is Google Summer of Code. So what are these two things? Any company or any organization that uses open source software contributes to different projects themselves. At the same time, they also want people externally to contribute to their own products. For example, the entire Git project, the source code management which people use, is an open source software. And there are people contributing to it, even students. And Git is one of the participants in Google Summer of Code. Not just that, you may think, I don't know how many of you know this. Things like compilers are open source, and there are students who contributed to compilers. The Python language project itself is open source, and there are students every year who sign up for contributing or building something within Python, which gets released. These are things you proactively apply and do such that it adds a lot of value in your resume, and that is going to prove as a very big differentiator from any candidate and from thousands of resumes that recruiters and interviewers look through, to differentiate yourself. The moment somebody sees something as good as a contribution to open source, which is either through Hacktober Festival or through GSOC or even otherwise, right? A good project where you've contributed, that's a testimonial in itself that you know things and you know how things work and you know how to work with other people to do something, right? So try and get into some of these and do some open source contributions. As a student, that's adding a lot of value to yourself. So it's been a bit, I don't know if it's a bit overwhelming for you, but that's all that I had to talk about. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. And at the same time, I also want to give my due credits to a couple of my colleagues who helped me build all of this content and run this. Uh, I've taken a lot of inputs from a campus recruiter whose name is Lakshmi, and you know, uh, a manager who does a lot of managerial interviews and whatnot, who tries to understand not just from a technical but more from a team perspective what the candidate should look like in building all of this content. Due credits to them. Thank you so much. The forum is open for any questions. We I can spend the next 45 minutes or even an hour for that matter in answering your questions. And I'd like to take as many as possible. Yeah, thank you.
Hello.
Yep. Hi.
How to purchase that lead code, that premium one pro? Can you purchase that in India? That gives lot of practice of Microsoft and all that stuff.
That is right. You should be able to do that. I don't.
No,
What's the limitation that you see there?
no, it is coming in dollar. That is why.
Okay. There are
That,
different ways in which you can do that. One is like, if your parents have a credit card, use that credit card. It is
okay.
also possible to use debit cards. But the only thing is, there may be a small currency conversion fee that may be applied.
Yeah,
So,
there is $127 they're taking for 1 year.
yep, yep,
That is why I.
that is right. That is right. I mean, look, what I want you all to do is not to just get a job. I I would absolutely like every one of you to try and look for the top companies that we have, not just in India, but it could be anywhere in the world, right? The likes of Google, the likes of Facebook, the likes of Apple, the likes of Tesla. Think of those companies. Everybody is setting up uh, their offices in India. Something like Tesla is going to set up an R&D center in Bangalore. They've already announced that. Companies, I mean, new age companies like Coinbase, which deals with cryptocurrency, has set up an office in India. If you want to even try for companies like this, it is not going to be easy. You need a lot of preparation, and if you have to spend some money on it, do that. It is definitely going to be worth.
And one more thing,
120. Go ahead.
yeah, I want to ask that if I want to go in the field of cybersecurity, I am doing
Yeah.
the, I am to going, I am doing the project from the first year.
Mhm.
So I'm not getting opportunities in this world and mentorship I wanted for it.
Okay, this is a good question. Not just in terms of cybersecurity, it is also true in terms of in cases of things like data analytics, and so on and so forth. What I would say is don't restrict yourself as a fresh graduate to get only this kind of this particular job. Like, um, pick something where there is an option to move verticals or change the area in which you're working. You could start as a simple software developer. Things that a lot of people do in the early stages of career are very common. They are essentially the same set of things most of the time. So then you can slowly um, build your expertise in cybersecurity or data engineering, and then make the transformation into the area of your interest.
I'm
Be,
connecting,
be a little open.
yeah, I'm connecting that project to AI, artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
cybersecurity with AI. So that will fetch me the job in the fourth year. Not I'm completing the second year from Dayanand Sagar University.
Right. I'm sorry if I did not understand your question properly.
Yeah,
You will have to anyways complete all 4 years of your engineering to get
yeah.
into a good company, right? So
So
yeah,
I can get
be
the job
persistent.
in cybersecurity in entry level or not, or I have to wait for
Um,
to go for masters.
very likely no. And well, even after masters, I don't know if anyone can guarantee you that you will get a job in cybersecurity very specifically. You'll really have to work hard and make sure target specific companies that you want to get into and then do that. But having said that, cybersecurity is something that is very important for every company these days, right?
Yeah,
As an example, every every team within Atlassian has what is called as security champions. Though they may not be doing um, a lot of security related things, but they are the point of contact for any team about anything on security. And I'm very sure that every company, every team has these smaller teams and smaller set of people who do security related work. So it may be okay even for you to join a company and then be that person who is the expert on security and then do things that you're interested in.
okay. Thank you very much.
If you don't mind, I'll also have a cup of tea while answering your questions.
Guys, please feel free to ask your questions. You can either unmute yourself or drop your questions in the chat box.
So can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah,
That was
this is
Akhilesh, right?
Akhilesh. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
Akhilesh. So my question is, right now I'm doing my final years in
Yep.
electronics and in communication. So I'm really interested in embedded systems and EC related stuff. But
Yep.
right now I got an offer at CS based software development jobs. So
Okay.
is this a better option, like stick to this and change careers later, or focus on the embedded systems only right now?
It depends on various factors. There is no one simple solution which fits everyone here. And even for you, for that matter, you may have to consider a lot of different things that help you in making this decision. But I will give you my point. If you are really passionate about embedded systems and want to do something on that front, try and get into a company, or even if it is a small startup, very small company, in that field, so that you start your career there to get a head start. What will happen when you join? Well, there may be companies which do software, but also have something to do with embedded, which you may be able to move into at some point of time in your career. But after having joined some company and then done some work, even if it is 1 or 2 years of work, um, the problem that you will face is if you want to leave that job and start something else in the field of embedded systems or something else which is more specialized for that matter, the company which is hiring you may not treat you as a 2 year experienced person because you have zero experience in the area that they are looking for they're looking for your contributions in. You may have to start from zero again, which essentially means you may have to compromise on your salary. You may have to even further compromise on the years of experience that you have. Like it becomes a little tricky. So as a student, if you can experiment, you want to even spend 6 months, 8 months trying to do something yourself to showcase that you can do it, and then um, um, do or take up a career from there, that's fine. It's going to get a little hard after a couple of years of you working in any company doing something.
Okay, thank you.
If it,
That's
I maybe, you know, it's a little bit, it's the harsh reality, but it is what it is. I'm not saying that anybody,
yeah, cool.
somebody cannot do it. They can, but there are different compromises that you will have to make at different points of time to do this.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Hello, sir. I have a doubt here. I have a question.
Hi, this is it Ruthvik?
Yes, sir.
Hi.
Sir, let's say I intern with some company, let's say for around like 6 months or something. I do a good amount of time I spend there. So now if I want to change my if I want to like shift my shift on other companies, so does internships that I have done in like my first year of engineering or sometime there, does this actually matter? Let's say I am in final semester of my engineering now. So do the older ones really matter, or should their actual focus be based on this major accomplishment that I've done now?
It's if you can be more specific, I think that will help me. But I'll tell you one thing. Anything and everything that you do, whether it is in your first year or final year, does matter. And also, what is going to be critical is how you portray all of it, right? I'm the person who's hiring you, I'm completely external to you. Like I will know things about you only when you talk about it or when you um, put it in your resume. So it depends on what you are showcasing as the accomplishments and not, it's up to you to decide how you want to show things to the world. If you're applying for a job where you know what you did in your first year is of interest to the company and the people who are interviewing, showcase that, give more importance to that. The other way around, if you are applying for something which is more relevant to something that you did in your final year, um, give more importance to that.
Okay.
So I had a question.
Yeah.
So should I include my career objective in my resume? If so, how much does it weigh in?
This is a very good question, and a lot of people do include it. You should, and what you include here should not be more than 2 sentences, and try and keep it very simplistic. More than just saying career objective, you should look at a big picture of what you really want to do, right? For that matter, this example of Elon Musk's resume that I had showcased as more or less a career objective which is mentioned as aiming to reduce global warming through sustainable energy production and consumption, planning to reduce the risk of human extinction, of making life multiplanetary and setting up human colony of Mars. Right? That you can think of that as a career objective, but in fact, that's more than a career objective, and it's actually trying to make a statement of what somebody wants to be. For a student, it could be as simple as to be competitive, learn, and improve lives throughout the world by bringing in change. Right? It could be something as abstract as that. Don't try to be too specific, which says, lot of these resumes mention, I like to be a part of this organization and, build this and that. You know, probably you're restricting yourself to very specific things.
Thank you, sir.
Keep it simple and precise.
Hello, sir. My question
Hi.
is, how is the process of getting an off-campus interview at Atlassian, and what do recruiters mainly look for in students in off-campus interviews in comparison to on-campus interviews?
Okay, specifically talking about Atlassian, we have not done any off-campus drives in our 3 years of existence in India. The reasons for that are quite specific, that as of now, we are quite small, and the number of people that we wanted to hire also was quite limited. That doesn't mean that it's going to remain the same. We have been having these discussions of keeping a certain percentage of roles as open for anyone, wherein the likelihood of this happening would be either one is through referrals, two, it will be an application that is going to be open on our careers page for everyone. So you just have to apply. And what was the second part of your question?
What do recruiters mainly look for in students in off-campus in comparison to on-campus?
There is not going to be any difference. It's going to be exactly the same.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
I had a question for you. What is your view on pursuing masters? And what are the logistics that I must look at to choose a master's program, particularly for me in the computer science domain? So like if you could help me with a bird's eye view on how I could narrow down my master's program.
Okay, this is a very broad topic, but I'll try and answer it to the best of my knowledge. The first question was, what is my view on a master's program? Master's program is good in cases where you are trying to get the specialization in a particular field. It could be anything, right? It could be from blockchain to artificial intelligence to statistics to there is also something quite new for that matter, which is called IT management or something of that sort. I may use the wrong term there, but which also focuses on some management side of things as a master's program. Unless you really want to specialize in some of these things, I would not necessarily recommend you doing a master's right away. Or the other possibility that I see somebody taking up masters right after graduation is they want to do a PhD on a particular area. They absolutely want to go into research, find find their mojo in that, and do as much work in the research field and get a PhD and continue on the research line. That's the other area where I see somebody picking up masters right after graduation. Even otherwise, I am a strong believer that you should work at least for 1 or 2 years. Understand what and how things are done in the software industry, or anyone for that matter, any industry for that matter. And then in the due course of time, review what your likings and your interests were when you were studying to what it is now. If you still feel you want to pursue something which you were interested earlier, or in the due course of time, if you find something which interests you in your job and you actually want to, you feel not so equipped in that particular area of expertise and you want to get more knowledge there, that is probably when you should go for a master's. And also, this is where it will help you decide what is that specialization that I want when I'm doing a master's. Be informed of things like, typically, if you just go to your master's right after graduation, you are either looking at different market research that different organizations have provided you, or different opinions from different people, which have come your way, either your friends and seniors of past, or your family members, your own colleagues, and whatnot. So rather than trying to get influenced from all of these things, get a hands-on experience of doing certain things, yourself, and then 2 years down the lane, figure out if you really need a master's, and if you want to do that, what is that you want to do when you do your master's.
Yeah, that
Did
answers
that
my
answer
question.
your question?
Yeah, that answers my question, and also tells me that I should get 2 years of good experience, as in like working in a
Yep.
company. But what do you think about within this 2 year span, if I were to switch multiple times, like how would that come across?
Oh, I
Would
wouldn't
that help?
recommend you doing that. Absolutely no.
Could you come again?
Unless
Sorry.
I wouldn't recommend you switching, jobs within 2 years. Like that one thing that doesn't reflect well on, well on you, that you just keep moving from one thing to the other. Two, I mean, of course, yes, if you end up in a situation and in a job which you absolutely hate, then go ahead and do that. But if you do that, um, don't bother to show your first experience at all, right? Just show that you did this from this point of time. Whatever you like, whatever your job is, um, showcase only that. There is absolutely no need for you to show something on your resume which just says you worked in some place for 3 months or 4 months or even 6 months, right? Yeah, and in a very honest opinion, you will not be doing a lot of things in the first 2 years. So 2 years actually is the point where I feel most of the graduates that we hire feel confident enough that they can actually take up things on their own and do something, whether it is big projects or even going for a master's. I have a grad who joined us in 2019, who's in my team, and I've been mentoring him for a couple of years now. He has the same question of whether he wants to do masters or not. Very recently, also I had this conversation with him. Like he's about to complete 2 years in a couple of months now, and this is where I feel not just I, but he himself feels that he is capable of doing projects. He's capable of building things on his own without with okay, I wouldn't say without any help from anyone, but more or less with least interference from others and with least assistance from someone else. This is the point where he's considering whether he should look to get promoted and get more things on his plate, or if he should go back and do his masters.
Okay, yeah,
And
so I
more
get
from
that.
more from a master's perspective, it's going to be very critical to actually have some publications that you can show, not just job experience. For a master's degree, if you have IEEE publications in different conferences. Aim for something better than a conference, which is either a transaction, which is the best thing that you can get, but at the same time, it is incredibly hard. Journals are possibilities, but yeah, at the very least, a couple of transaction publications are going to be very helpful. And these need not always be from your academic point of view, from your graduation times. It can also be when you're also working in those 2 years of your work experience. So look for opportunities where you can do that.
Okay, yeah. So I gather that you get a complete sense of the project workflow in the 2 year span. Okay. I'm sorry that I'm taking up more time, but there is just one question that I wanted to talk to you about. That is, what are the
Go ahead.
tools that a person should like know or should explore before they sign up for a job? As in, like you can have Git, you can have other tools of that form that a student should know. Like it would be better if you go into a work experience knowing all of this, like a prerequisite.
There is nothing that is set in stone as a formula which will help people, and these are absolutely things that you should know. The more you know, the better it is for yourself and the person who is going to employ you. Git, in my opinion, is an absolute necessity. If as a candidate who is interviewing for a software-oriented job, and if you don't know Git, then you probably have something to fix. There is something problem, right? That is absolutely necessary. Beyond that, the languages that you have worked on is actually a big tool for you. It could be most of the time I find students using C++ while solving problems, and that is very natural because that's the one that gives you most flexibility and rather the best performance when you're trying to solve for algorithms and data structures and looking at how to get the best solution of something, best runtime, best storage requirements and whatnot. Yes, that is the best. But beyond that, have some experience. Try to gain some experience with any other language. It could be Java. It could be Kotlin. It could be .NET. It could be Node, TypeScript, HTML, CSS, whatnot. Right? All of these things are some things that you have heard about, maybe at some point used, written some code. Try to build something out of it, even if it is a very simple, dumb looking application, that's totally fine. But the experience of trying to do something is going to be very, very useful. Even if you're trying to, mimic something, let's say you're trying to clone Google's website, or if you're trying to clone Gmail, if you can build a UI which looks like Gmail, which looks like YouTube, that's a lot of work. You may think, what's the big deal, but I tell you, it's not simple. A lot of hard work goes into all of it. So that's going to be your biggest tool that will be very handy. Beyond that, if you ask me, having any knowledge and experience with some of the cloud tools, like it could be AWS, it could be Google Cloud, it could be Microsoft Azure. How does cloud work? What different capabilities are there? What different things can you do on AWS? How do you spin up an EC2 instance? How do you bring up a database instance? How do you deploy? These are going to add a lot of value. Like they're invaluable, to be very honest.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir, for addressing all of these questions, and that gave me a lot of insight. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure. And again, just to add a couple of more points on that, it's not always web and web technologies that you have to look for. You may be interested in doing something on your phones, because it is something that you can easily see, use yourself, and make other people use, right? Try to build mobile apps that are absolutely great in terms of the experience that you get from it. You may build a native Android app with Kotlin or Java. You may build cross-platform apps using things like Flutter, React Native. Yeah, all of these are possibilities. And if you ever think about Java and the web side of things, try learning Spring. Spring Boot is a framework which is very widely used and is again invaluable. Likewise, on Python, you have Django, which is very widely used. Again, Node has a whole bunch of Node is slightly different instead of frameworks. It's called packages. So there are a bunch of packages. There's a package manager. Use those. In fact, there is another tool which is a lot more used these days, which is called as Postman. It's a tool which helps you do API things with APIs, like design, build APIs, test APIs, helps you with a lot of these testing mechanisms and whatnot. So all of that is going to be very useful. It is like these are things that are going to add value to your own career, your own profile, but these are not expectations. So anybody who's looking at a resume with any of these things mentioned, they are going to get delighted. I will guarantee you that. It's not something that is found very often. That's going to definitely serve as a huge differentiator to the different profiles that somebody would be looking at.
Sir, I have a question. Is it really important to add soft skills along with technical skills in the resume?
No, not at all. When we talk about soft skills, it is more of communication. That is the one thing that anybody who is hiring someone from a university is looking at, and your communication skills are very easily identifiable and accessible when somebody interviews you. So don't bother mentioning about soft skills. Those are things that you exhibit and not mention.
Sir, I have another question. Is it possible
Please.
to get an internship in a specific domain? I am very much interested in Internet of Things, and is it possible to get a project to be done specifically in
It is
that
definitely
domain?
possible. It is definitely possible. You just have to look for it, right? Identify organizations that are working in those fields, the field of your interest. Try to see if you can get a connection in that particular company and try to approach them. That's probably one of the easier ways of doing it. The other one is like, any of these organizations that you identify, see if they are taking interns, if their careers page has intern openings. Third thing, as I said, these Hacktoberfest and open source contributions that I mentioned about using GSOC also has a lot of companies which work on a whole bunch of things. As I said, as basic things as compilers are actually open source and students contribute to it. So I will not be surprised, or in fact, I will be surprised if there are no companies on things like IoT or even embedded systems, which are looking for contributions. So keep your eyes open. Look for opportunities anywhere to connect with people. Even one step further, if you can actually, IEEE Bangalore section itself runs some mentoring programs. As far as I know, try to find people in specific areas of your interest who can mentor you, who can give you guidance and help you with all of these things. So yes, if you really wish to do that, there are different ways in which you can get internships in doing all of these things.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
Hello, sir. I have a question regarding the structure of resume. What should be the basic structure of resume for the winning resume? And what should be like, which section should come first and what should be the order followed, and which is the most important part of the resume?
Obviously, your name, your contact details, and what you're studying and what is your current GPA or whatever equivalent of that is, comes on the top. That's important. First, you introduce yourself. Next thing is, what is that you have done, or rather, the very next thing is what are your skills and competencies? What do you know? What do you know well, and what you're competent in? And the next thing is likely all of the different projects that you've done. If you've done internships, add them. And then if you've done different projects at different stages, add all of those details in the reverse chronological order. And finally, like any real big achievements or certificates and accomplishments that you have, that comes at the end. Yeah, that's it.
Is it necessary to add a photo in the start of the resume?
No, not really. You can. I mean, like, there's nothing that says you should not add, but it is not absolutely necessary that you add.
Thank you,
I
sir.
see a few questions coming on chat, so let me take a look at that. Okay, that was the first question. Explain the structure of structure behind the resume. Is it possible the current flow to a man in life? Sorry, I did not understand this question at all. That was from Chandra Bharat. If you want to unmute and ask your question, go ahead. There is a question from Ashwini. How appropriate are skills like time management or leadership, the ones that most commonly added by students, when they are corroborated when the achievements or the fields of resume, but only when probably interviewed? Okay, Chandra, you are here. Go ahead with your question.
Good evening, sir.
Hi.
Hi, sir. Sir, Nicholas Tesla, sir, is invented an AC current, and then he proved that AC current flows through them, and it is not bad to anyone. Is it right, sir?
You are asking a very specific question on electricity. Okay, is it possible that current flows through a man and life? So current can flow through a man. That is how you get electrocuted. Can a man live if current flows through him? Depends on the amount of electricity that is flowing and the duration that it flows. I, however, don't know how this has any relevance to the topic of interest today, which is on resume. But yeah, current can flow through a man and still live. If you have ever gotten a small electric shock, that's what it is.
Is it happen or not, sir?
Sorry, what was that?
Is it happen or not, sir? Tesla, sir.
I'm sorry, Okay, well, I do understand that you have questions. One, this may not be the best forum to ask this question. Two, I may not be the best person to answer this question. So we'll move on to the next one. How appropriate? Well, things like time management and leadership. Time management and leadership are things that you should not mention on your resume, to be very honest. It is expected of every student to manage their time. That is something as basic as, if you don't manage your time well, you cannot finish answering your question paper in your exams, right? So no to that. Leadership, probably not helpful unless it's something that's going to actually add a lot of value. If you think it is something that's a big accomplishment of yours. Let's say you were able to okay, this may be a good thing. You were able to lead a team of students who did something like, a few years ago, there was a satellite that was launched, a satellite developed by students. Like, you were able to lead that team, which did that satellite development and, launched it. It may be important. And even there, it is very critical that you have a lot of points to talk about in an interview of how you led something, and why is that leadership so important that you have mentioned in your resume. Otherwise, I don't see why somebody should be mentioning that. I'll move to the next question, which is again from Ashwini. Would certification like a free 5-hour course that is ungraded or not assessed after completion add value? Very likely no. But again, if you've done a certification on some topic which has helped you accomplish something, let's say I was doing a project on Python to build something. So to maybe build a website, completely use Python, Django, and frameworks with that to build some product. In order to be able to do that, I took up a Python certification, which is even if it is ungraded, which is fine, but I have a completion certificate that I did that. Feel free to mention that. But otherwise, just if you do a certification on n number of things, don't mention. It's not going to add a lot of value unless each of these certifications are connected and help you do something. Next question, Sandeep, is should we include class 10th and 12th details in the resume? No. Very likely in campus interviews, you will have some cutoff percentages and whatnot, or CGPA. You become eligible to sit in a particular campus interview only because of the fact that you've met that criteria. So it's not adding any value, and you need not mention that. Another question from Prerna: should a student focus on learning many technologies and build a few projects, or would it be better to learn few and build many? So this is where what I mentioned about the breadth and depth of things come into picture. Breadth of things are what different things do you know. Depth of things is how much do you know on one particular thing. I would never say don't try out something, right? Try as many things as you want, but at the same time, you will not be able to do a lot of projects and apply everything that you are trying to learn meaningfully. And the one project or a few projects, even if it is 2 or 3 over the course of time of your engineering, you will be applying specific technologies in each of them. The bigger question will be when going into an interview, how well do you know that specific technology and specific details of things that you have done in the project? So try different things, but if you find something more interesting than the other, learn more about it. Get your hands dirty on anything possible with that. That's going to help you a lot. Wherein you will not just have breadth, but you will also have depth on something. There is a question from Rutvik. If we have had a freelancing experience in a non-technical domain, should that be mentioned in the resume? Depends. Depends on what that is. As a student, in fact, I have done some odd things when I was a student, right? In the holidays when there were things, there was nothing to do. I have gone into different, malls back in the day in Bangalore and distributed pamphlets and things of that sort. This could be a non-technical freelancing, technically speaking, but will that make any difference in my resume? No, so I'm not going to mention that. So it depends on, what you have done and if it is relevant. You will have to ask the question yourself. And again, real estate on your resume is very, very expensive. So don't use it for something that's not worth mentioning. Be very choosy on what you want to show the rest of the world, and also look at who the audience is going to be. You may want to cater differently in different cases for different roles. Do that accordingly. Okay, there is a question from Mahesh. I'm pursuing degree in data science with machine learning. I want to know whether it is necessary to practice contributing to lead code, or is there any other open source platform for data science? For data science, there is Kaggle. Well, it's not an open source, but it's definitely similar to lead code in terms of what you're going to learn and what you're going to achieve. Kaggle has a lot of data science problems that you can solve. And also, end of the day, it gives you certain scores based on how you have solved and whatnot. So use that. Again, even if you're using data science, it is not just data science things, which is essentially writing queries and slicing and dicing data that matters. You may still have to write some code. You may still have to know what a data structure, how it works. So based on your interest, feel free to get some practice on lead code or even gigs for geeks and whatnot if you like. But if not, use Kaggle. There's a question from Aditya.
Sir, sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt.
hi.
I think we can keep Aditya's question as the last for today's session. And
Sure. Yeah,
after that, I think we can wrap up for the day. Does that sound good?
absolutely.
All right.
Thank you. What additional things can we add to our resume to make it different from others and more catchy for the recruiter? Well, I can tell you what things you should not add, if that helps. And I've already mentioned it as well. Never add something to just make your resume flashy. That's a big no. Never try to make something very fancy, look beautiful, without actually a lot of material or a lot of content, a lot of weight and the things that you're mentioning. A resume may look very beautiful with kind of very few things to talk about. Don't do that. My best advice to anyone preparing a resume is keep it simple, keep it truthful, keep it precise and to the points. That's even if your resume doesn't look beautiful, that's fine. What it conveys, the information that it has, will be more important. And one other thing is, if you are somebody who's interested in things like JavaScript, CSS, HTML, have your resume online, like, build up a site, build a custom page for your own resume, which acts also as your portfolio. That's going to be a lot more useful for somebody, like a recruiter or even an interviewer, to look at and see what different things you've done. That's going to be beneficial. But otherwise, try to keep it very simple. Even if there are no colors, if everything is plain black and white, that's totally fine. Cool. There is one more question. Risha, if you think we can take it, I will. Otherwise, maybe I can answer it offline and you can share that later.
Sir, if it's only one question, I think it's all right.
Okay. Sure. The question is from Parshuram. You mentioned it is better to avoid false things in resume and bad experiences in a company. Well, not necessarily bad experiences, but if it is very short and if it's not adding value, don't mention. Of course, yes, never mention anything that is false. What if an interviewer finds it? It's definitely not going to look good. I can actually give you an example. Again, I won't mention the place, but I was in this campus where we had our first round of screening, which was the HackerRank online coding exercise going on, and we just happened to notice a student using a phone to write code, while it was strictly not allowed. Somehow the student did have a phone, and he happened to be writing some code looking at his phone. We did not do anything. We just did not consider that person for interviewing. At the same time, if we find out you are saying that does not match, like you mentioned something that is not matching with what you're saying in an interview, it is a clear red flag. You need not worry. The interviewer is not going to, you will not even know that the interviewer has figured it out. It is just that you won't make it. And nobody may say anything. It's just that some companies may even go to an extent to blacklist you. You will never be called for an interview, no matter how many times you apply there. It is as simple as that. It's all about how truthful you are to yourself. If you think you can cheat and do something, well, that's not something that I would encourage people to look for.
We have reached the end of
Okay. I was
I
about to say the same thing. Thank you.
I request everyone to provide your valuable feedback with the link given in chat box. Thank you, sir, for sparing your time for today's session and patiently answering all your questions. As a token of gratitude, we have something for you. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate giving me this opportunity and talking to a lot of you. I hope this has been of some use to people who have attended. There is one last question, and I'll just take 1 minute to answer that. That question is, what about companies using automated processing of resumes? Yes, there may be some companies which do that, but not a lot of them. This happens only when it is off campus and you have applied on their website. So again, what can you do to ensure that your resume gets shortlisted? There is nothing that I would say you should specifically do. Maybe your skills and competencies is where you will get an advantage. Having those specific words, like technologies and whatnot that you've worked on, that's one thing that these automated things will look for. But otherwise, your resume should look no different from your typical one for any of these. And of course, if you can actually have for these kind of applications that you submit online, if you can get a referral, it is even better. The chances and the likelihood of you getting a call for an interview is very high compared to just applying on their website. Yeah, thank you so much. It was a good 2 hours that we spent, and as I said, I hope it has been useful. Please feel free to share the feedback, and Varsha, if possible, I would appreciate if you can send me some feedback that people have shared. That would help me as well.